For your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice. Because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you. The young camels of Midian and Ephraim, all those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. And our gospel reading are the familiar words from Epiphany, from Matthew in chapter 2. Now in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men came from the east to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." Now when King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling them together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least of the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler, who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men, and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay homage." When they heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and they paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their country by another road. This is the word of our Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. Gracious God, do grant that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts will be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, one of my favorite books is a little book by Dr. Les Parrott, and it's called Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda. I don't know if you've ever been in a place where you've had to say in your life, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I think we all have. And in that book, it tells a story, an old legend about three men who carried sacks. Now, each man carried two sacks, one on his front and one on his back. Now, when the first man was asked to tell about his sacks, he said, "In the sack on my back are all the good things friends and family have done for me. That way they're hidden from my view and I don't dwell on them." And in the front sack, he said he carried all the bad things that had happened to him and all the mistakes that he had made in his life. And he said, "Every now and then I stop and I open the sack and I take out one of the bad things and I look at it and I think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then I put it back in and I go on." Well, you see, he stopped so much and concentrated so much on all the bad stuff in his life that his pace was slow and he made little progress. Well, when the second man was asked about his sacks, he replied in the exact opposite way. He said in the front of his sacks were all the good things that had happened to him. I like to see them, so quite often I take them out and I show them off to people and I reminisce about the good things that had happened. So somebody said, but what about the sack on your back? And he answered, well, I keep in there all my mistakes, all the things I've done that I regret, and I carry them with me. So sure, they're heavy and they slow me down, but you know, for some reason, I just can't put them down. Well, the third man was asked about his sacks, and he answered it a slightly different way. Like the second man, he said, well, the sack in the front is where I keep all my blessings. All the blessings I've experienced, all the great things that other people have done for me. The weight isn't a problem. In fact, it keeps me moving forward. It makes me smile all the time. But the second sack he was asked about, and he said, well, that sack is empty. He said, you see, there's nothing in it. I cut a big hole in the bottom of it. And then I put all my regrets and all the bad things that happened to me, all my mistakes, I put in the sack on my back. They go in one end, and they come right back out the other. I'm not carrying around any extra weight, he said. I think that's a really good story to begin with for the first Sunday of a new year. We all carry around extra weight. We all carry around hurts and regrets that weigh us down. And I think that New Year would be a good time to cut a hole in your bag of regrets and let those hurts and regrets fall out so that you can focus on the good things in your life, the blessings that have happened to you. So as you start this new year, I encourage you as you leave today to cut a hole in your sack and let all those things go by and see what happens. I said that today is Epiphany, and it's not often that Epiphany falls on Sunday. And so we tell the story of the wise men following a distant light and going through their celebration of the meeting Christ. And the season, it's not just a day of Epiphany. We're now into the season of Epiphany, which starts the second Sunday of Christmas. And it goes on right through Transfiguration Sunday, which is when we see Jesus in all his glory. I'm not going to ask you to tell me when Transfiguration Sunday is, unless somebody knows right off the top of your head. But that's coming up, in a while. So we're in the season of Epiphany for a while. So Epiphany is not just a season in the church year, it's also crept into secular usage. When we say someone's had an epiphany, we usually mean that that person has had a moment in which they've achieved a realization, an awareness, or a knowledge of something, and that those events have thrown them into some new light. It's changed them in some profound way. And often epiphany can be life-changing. I've had many epiphanies in my life that were definitely life-changing. Becoming a minister was an epiphany I was not expecting in my life. And thank goodness I saw it when I did. But I did try to run from it for a while. So I want to tell you another story about an epiphany. I was reading about an African-American woman named Bessie Pender. And one day she admitted to herself that she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. You see, she'd been working in a job that she found unfulfilling for more than 10 years. It wasn't what she wanted to do, but it was what she kind of had to do. And she knew that, and she was okay with that, but she wasn't really happy. You see, she and her husband had married young, and they both had a family by the time they were 18 years old. And then she stayed home with the children for a little while, and then she finally had to go back to work to make ends meet. And so she took a job as a custodian in the Norfolk Public School System in Virginia. And for 10 years, she worked that same job, cleaning and dusting, and she just didn't find it fulfilling, you see, because her dream had always been to be a teacher. And so it hurt her to have to clean up after the teachers every day because it reminded her that she wasn't doing what she really wanted. And so one day, as she was cleaning dirty desks and in the midst of a particularly dirty classroom, she had an epiphany. She started to cry, and she started to pray. And God met her there, and they talked. And Bessie decided to return to school. Go back to college after all those years. She started taking one class at Old Dominion University. It took her 7 years to get her degree. In the midst of all sorts of frustrations of raising small children, her younger sister had died of kidney failure, her father's health had deteriorated and required her taking more care of him, but she didn't give up. She kept working at it. She worked long hours. She changed her hours to work at night so that she could go to school in the day, and then she had to change her school at night and work during the day. She just kept working at it. She didn't give up. And finally, it paid off. And she became a 5th grade teacher in the Norfolk Public School System in the same school where she had worked as a custodian all those years. And she was voted Teacher of the Year. I wonder if somebody I know, somebody in this congregation, is tired and going through difficult times in your life. There's lots of us that are. Maybe you're sick and tired of being sick and tired too. Maybe you're in need of an epiphany in your own life. Well, you're in the right place. You're in the right place to turn your life over to God. For God's guidance and God's persistence. For God will not leave you alone in all of this. The symbol of light is an appropriate one for this season of darkness. Light is a favorite symbol throughout all the scriptures. And Jesus tells us that we can't hide our light under a bushel. We have to let it be seen by everyone. And when Isaiah sought to proclaim the coming of the Anointed One, he says, "Arise and shine, for your light has come." That is the good news as we begin this new year. Our light has come. Christ is our light, and in him there is no darkness. Well, just as light is the appropriate symbol for Christ, darkness is the appropriate symbol for a world without Christ. Have you ever wondered what people centuries from now would think about our culture? I was reading another book, and it's a great book. It's by Jean Shepherd, and it's called A Fistful of Fig Newtons. And it's a really interesting story about a group of archaeologists who, in the distant future, they're excavating the remains of New York City. And burrowing under Madison Avenue, the heart of the modern advertising world, they discover canisters of tins holding reels of videotape containing hours and hours of television commercials from our time. And so they determined that these reels must have something to say about what's important to us as a culture. So they find a way to watch the tapes, and it takes them a while to find something to watch them on because there's no machines that run those anymore. But they finally find a way to watch them, and they grow excited with the anticipation. So one of the videotapes contains a scene where people are pushing carts of some kind, and 3 of them stop, and they reverently pick up a package of rolls, white rolls. And their eyes are glazed in ecstasy as they handle the rolls. And a stern white man arrives in a white suit, and he says with definite authority, "Ladies, please don't squeeze the Charmin." And these 3 women continue to squeeze the rolls with even more intensity. And then the guard, overcome by emotion, picks up his own rolls, and he squeezes and he says, "I just can't help it. Charmin's so squeezably soft." Amazed, the archaeologists were at the significance of this excavation. And they say, if we can find out what was on those Charmins or what they were used for, I believe we would know what this civilization was all about. I hope that we were about more than that. But life is confusing. I wish that life was so easily explained as the great philosopher of the comic strips, Charlie Brown, used to do. Lucy saying to him, "Life is a mystery, Charlie Brown. Do you know the answer?" And Charlie Brown answers, "Be kind, don't smoke, be prompt, smile a lot, eat sensibly, avoid cavities, mark your ballot carefully, avoid too much sun, Send overseas packages early. Love all creatures above and below. Insure your belongings and try to keep the ball low. But before he can get out another platitude, Lucy interrupts, hold real still, because I'm going to hit you with a very sharp blow to the nose. We can appreciate Lucy's frustration, can't we? Because none of us appreciate a know-it-all who spouts platitudes that miss our real needs altogether. What we need is a little encouragement at times, don't we? We all need that. Maybe this past year has been a rough one for you. I've heard that from a lot of people in here. It's been a hard, hard year. Maybe you need someone to put his hand on your shoulder and to reinforce your feelings about yourself. Well, Christ offers that assurance. Christ says, arise, shine, your light has come. So what would it take to get your new year off to a good start? Some of us have made resolutions. We're trying to lose weight, exercise more, use our time more efficiently. We make our resolutions, but it's not an easy world out there. Our biggest enemy is within. There's something within our hearts that causes some of us to resist the very things that we need for a satisfying life. There's some of us that keep that bag on our back filled with all our regrets and all our mistakes, and we don't let it go for nothing. But who can doubt? Who can doubt that the light has come? You have seen the Christ born again. There's nothing wrong with cutting a hole in that sack and letting those things go. I read a story about a young man who went swimming at midnight one night with a friend in the Atlantic Ocean off the Bay of Massachusetts. And he said that the water was full of phosphorescent light. And every dip of his hand, the light came out and it produced something like a circle of flashing gems. And every breaker looked like a cascade of fireworks. And he was just mesmerized. I don't know if you've ever seen that effect, but it's an amazing thing if you've ever seen it. And to ride the waves, they went out some distance from the shore. And then turning toward land, all of a sudden he was gripped with an unbelievable fear. The lights from the shore didn't shine anymore. And he did not know his way back. So he looked up to the sky to get his bearings, but the sky was like the water, and it was full of a myriad of northern lights and just phosphorescence, and he couldn't get bearings there. And the terror, he said, engulfed him. And he learned that there was with no fixed star to guide him, it's almost impossible to chart your course. Well, thank God we have a star. We have a star to follow, the same star that guided the Magi long ago, the light of Christ. Christ, who is dependable guide, whose love never fails us. Christ in whom we can depend, in whom we can trust, and we can trust enough to cut that hole in our bag and see if instead of concentrating on our regrets, we could concentrate on the good things in our lives and the things that God has given us. Should we find ourselves in the presence of Christ, would we find ourselves overwhelmed as everyone else? Overwhelmed with his holiness? If you haven't heard the song, I Can Only Imagine, you need to go home and listen to that song. It's a beautiful song by Bart Millard and Mercy Me, and it says something like, I can only imagine, surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or be in awe of you still? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Can you imagine what it would be like to be in the presence of Christ? Friends, you are. You are in the presence of Christ. Are you tired of living in semi-darkness? Arise and shine, for your light has come.